Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this workshop. My name is Btihaj Ajana, and I am a research fellow here at AIAS, and I'm also a senior lecturer at King's College in London. So I would like to begin by thanking AIAS for all the support it has provided towards making this workshop happen, and a special thank you to our very extremely competent administrative team for all the hard work and for making the organization of this workshop run very smoothly. So thank you so much. So today we are gathering to think together and talk about a particular phenomenon that has become quite prevalent in recent years. And perhaps you are yourself part of this phenomenon, or perhaps you have noticed on social media that some of your friends or colleagues or family members have a tendency to share information about their physical activity, like the distances they run or the distances they cycled, their body fat percentage or their calories consumed on social media. And this tendency to track, measure and share data regarding physical activity is precisely the topic of today's workshop. And it is also what is being encapsulated through this term, the quantified self, a catchphrase that now is used to describe any form of self-quantification and self-tracking through the dedicated apps and available digital devices. And when initially this term or this concept of the quantified self emerged following the setup of a group in California back in 2007 by Gary Wolf and Kevin Kelly from Wired magazine, the early adopters of this trend and the followers of this group were described in this kind of terms. This is a quote from The Economist: as fitness freaks or technology evangelists or personal development junkies or simply patients who are suffering from various health problems. But since then, and almost 10 years later, it seems that this practice of self-tracking and quantification has become quite routine, so ubiquitous, and dare I say, even banal at times. Because now we don't really have to fall into any of this category to be deemed as a self-quantifier. Because the conversions of health apps with mobile devices, it is likely that somebody who is owning and using a smartphone, for instance, will be engaged in one form of self-tracking or another. And we can see this, for instance, if you have one of the latest models of iPhone, they do come with built-in apps such as Health, which tracks the user, it tracks its physical activity, and sometimes users are not even aware that this is being done. And Apple made it quite hard to actually uninstall. I tried to uninstall my app, this app from my phone, and I wasn't actually successful so far. So this kind of the way in which the self-tracking practices and habits are actually embedded in everyday products like our smartphones and our watches. What this does, it makes them become quite naturalized. They are regarded now as a matter of course. You track as you go, sometimes even passively and automatically. And I think when technological trends and technological developments start to feel natural and obvious and taken for granted, I think this is when it is most important to pause and think about their implications quite critically. This is when it's important to have a critical distance towards this development and engage with them with a level of caution. But oftentimes the discussions revolving around the quantified self and the tracking culture in general, what they do, they tend to emphasize and highlight the benefits and the value they have vis-a-vis the users and other entities like employers, health insurance, healthcare providers, and so on, while also sometimes precluding other aspects and some important concerns that are worthy of consideration as well. Most obvious of which are issues to do with privacy, the concerns with data ownership, like who owns that data and with whom that data needs to be shared. So therefore, it is the aim of today's workshop to contribute with some empirical and theoretical nuances towards this debate about the quantified self and self-tracking culture. And I am very delighted to be joined by excellent speakers who are really at the forefront of the critical study of self-tracking practices. And together, what we will try to do is discuss some of the relevant issues regarding the quantified self, ranging from the effect of self-tracking on understandings and representations of the self and subjectivity, all the way to the dynamics of the quantified self at the workplace and its interplay with neoliberal ethos. And because this is a workshop, so most of the work that will be actually presented is work in progress. So perhaps it will be raising more questions that it is able to answer. But that's the point of having an experimental brainstorming events like today's. So I therefore kind of really invite you and encourage you to engage with the speakers, to challenge the speakers, and to share with us your ideas and thoughts, and even your experiences. Maybe you are yourself a self-quantifier, so we'd like to hear from you as well. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker in the first panel, Paolo Rufino from the University of York in the UK. Paolo.